between 1978 and 1992. Along the highways of 6 American states, the bodies of at least 6 young women were found. Each one had red or reddish-brown hair. Each one was found near a major interstate. And to this day, most of these cases remain completely unsolved, connected only by a nickname that emerged from law enforcement radio chatter, the Redhead murders. This is one of the strangest, most overlooked serial killer cases in American history, and almost nobody has heard of it. Stay with me. The story begins along Interstate 40, a highway stretching across Tennessee, Arkansas, and beyond, lined with truck stops, motels, and long stretches of isolated road. Starting in the late 1970s and continuing into the early 1990s, the bodies of unidentified women began turning up along this corridor and its connecting highways. What made investigators suspect a connection was not just the timing, but a specific and unusual detail. Nearly every victim had red or auburn hair. In an era before national DNA databases and coordinated multi-state task forces, jurisdictions rarely shared information efficiently. A body found in Tennessee might never be cross-referenced against a similar case in West Virginia, even if the details matched almost perfectly. It was truck drivers, of all people, who first noticed the pattern, trading stories over CB radios about young women found along the same stretches of highway they drove every week. The first body widely associated with the case was discovered in April 1985 along Interstate 40 near Wilson County, Tennessee. She was young, likely in her 20s, with reddish hair, found in a wooded area just off the highway. She had no identification. No missing persons report matched her description in the immediate area. She was given the case designation the Wilson County Jane Doe. And for decades, that is all anyone knew about her. A woman with no name, discovered in a place she likely never intended to be found. Over the following years, similar cases emerged with disturbing regularity. In West Virginia, in Kentucky, in Arkansas, women with red hair found near highways, largely unidentified, their deaths investigated by local police departments with limited resources and no reason, at the time, to suspect they were looking at pieces of a larger pattern. Some of these women showed signs of having been transported significant distances before their bodies were left, suggesting whoever was responsible had access to a vehicle and was willing to travel across state lines, complicating any single department's ability to build a complete picture. The theory that gained the most traction among investigators centered on the trucking industry itself. Interstate 40 and its connecting highways were and remain major trucking corridors. A theory emerged that a long-haul truck driver, someone with the mobility to cross multiple states, the anonymity of constant movement, and knowledge of isolated rest stops and back roads, could be responsible for some or all of the killings. This theory gained further weight decades later when the FBI launched its Highway Serial Killings Initiative in 2009, a program specifically created to analyze the disturbing pattern of unsolved murders concentrated along American interstate highways, identifying hundreds of potential victims and suspects nationwide, many of them connected to the trucking industry. While Tennessee's cases drew the most attention, similar bodies were appearing hundreds of miles away in West Virginia. In 1983, along Interstate 77, the body of another young woman with reddish hair was discovered by a highway maintenance crew. Like the Wilson County case, she carried no identification and no local family came forward to claim her. West Virginia investigators, working independently and unaware of the pattern developing in Tennessee, classified her simply as an unidentified homicide victim. It would take decades and the eventual formation of coordinated national databases before anyone connected her case to the broader pattern along the interstate system. She remains, to this day, one of the still unidentified victims associated with the Redhead murders, a woman whose name has never been recovered, even as forensic technology has slowly identified others around her. In Arkansas, a third case emerged in 1985, this time along Interstate 30. A trucker driving his usual route before dawn spotted what he initially believed was debris along the shoulder of the highway. It was the body of a young woman, again with red hair, again showing no identification, discovered in a location consistent with the pattern investigators would only later recognize. Arkansas State Police, like their counterparts in Tennessee and West Virginia, worked the case independently, canvassing local missing persons reports, running composite sketches through regional media, and ultimately filing the case away, Unsolved, as leads dried up. It is cases like this one, scattered across state lines, investigated in isolation, that illustrate exactly why the Redhead murders went unrecognized as a potential pattern for as long as they did. Before national criminal databases became standard practice, a body found in Arkansas and a body found in Tennessee, even sharing striking similarities, might never be compared side by side. The FBI's Highway Serial Killings Initiative, launched in 2009, would later reveal just how widespread this kind of pattern truly was, identifying over 750 potential victims and more than 450 potential suspects connected to killings along America's interstate system. Many of the victims sharing a disturbing set of characteristics with the women associated with the Redhead murders: transient lifestyles, difficulty being immediately identified, and bodies discovered near major trucking routes. The initiative confirmed what advocates and independent researchers had long suspected, that America's highway system had, for decades, provided a kind of operational cover for killers who understood that crossing a state line could also mean crossing out of any single investigator's jurisdiction and attention. For decades, the Wilson County Jane Doe remained exactly that: an unidentified body buried under a simple marker, her case growing colder with each passing year. Then, in 2018, over 3 decades after her body was found, advances in forensic genealogy, the same technology that would soon help identify the Golden State Killer, finally gave investigators a name. She was S.B. Pearl Black, originally from West Virginia, a young woman who had been missing from her family for years. Her disappearance never connected to the body found hundreds of miles away in Tennessee. Her family finally had an answer to a question that had haunted them for over 30 years. But identifying a victim is not the same as identifying a killer. To this day, S.B. Black's murder remains unsolved. The person responsible, if a single person was responsible for even a portion of the Redhead murders, has never been identified, arrested, or named. What makes the Redhead murders particularly unsettling to researchers who have studied the case is the ambiguity at its core. Unlike more famous serial killer cases, there is no confirmed single perpetrator, no signature confession, no definitive count of how many victims truly belong to this pattern, versus how many are simply similar-looking cases from a violent era along America's highways. Some criminologists believe multiple killers, operating independently, may account for different victims currently grouped under the same nickname. Others believe a single individual, likely connected to the trucking industry, was responsible for at least a cluster of the killings before either being caught for an unrelated crime, dying, or simply stopping. The case remains a haunting example of how decentralized law enforcement, before the era of shared national databases, allowed patterns of violence to go unrecognized for years. Women who almost certainly deserved a coordinated, urgent investigation were instead treated as isolated local cases, their deaths investigated in silos by departments unaware that similar bodies were appearing in neighboring states along the very same highway. Modern forensic genealogy has begun to slowly chip away at the anonymity that once defined these cases, giving names back to women who spent decades known only by case numbers. But names are not the same as answers. Somewhere, whoever left these women along America's highways may never be identified, a possibility that continues to disturb the investigators, genealogists, and family members who have spent decades trying to bring these cases the resolution they were denied. Subscribe to VaultX Mysteries, because the vault goes deeper than you think, and we are just getting started.